Okay. Once again, we are ready for Chronicles of the Sword. Any percent speedrun. Beginning. 3, 2, 1. Alrighty, Chronicles of the Sword, any percent. I start off with this intro every time, but kind of never get tired of it. Chronicles of the Sword is the special real-time strategy game mode created for Soulcalibur 3, which was designed specifically to introduce the create a soul function. All the characters in the game can pretty much be created with the create a soul function if you wanted to copy them. So there are a bunch of very unique characters over the course of this game. It uses Soulcalibur combat to decide most things. You move these soldiers around the map, attack these strongholds, and when you conquer a stronghold, you go into Soulcalibur combat like this. As you can see, it takes a bit to load, so part of my speedrun strategy involves minimizing the amount of time that I'm actually running on the field. Or rather, minimizing the number of actual battles I want to get into, so that I can reduce those load times. It takes a lot longer to load each individual battle than it does specific rounds between characters, so I also try to group as many characters into a thing as I can before I fight. You can also fight on the field. You can just let people whack at each other, or you can start a battle as I did here. The tutorial explains all this, a lot of these text boxes. Unfortunately, you have to go through the tutorial every time you start a brand new game.
Final battle, fight!
I'm sorry, but I must move on.
There are 4 different unit types you can use for your units on the battlefield. Notice that some are like on horses and stuff, and some units are on the ground. Bandits are distinguishable by wearing these heavy cloaks I've got. Bandits have a special property that they are, if I tried to leave them in in just field combat and let them whack at each other, they have the very worst stats. Regardless of what level you are, they are absolute trash and will get destroyed by pretty much anything because the computer never uses bandits. But they are the second fastest moving on the map and the second fastest at taking citadels, while cavalry and knights, who are the fastest in each of those respective categories, are the worst in the other. So cavalry do the least damage to strongholds, but are fastest, and knights are fastest at taking strongholds, so they do the most damage to them, but they are super slow.
Decisive battle.
This has role-playing game elements to it, and the fact that your characters, among other things, when you create characters, you have up to 13 classes to select from. Those classes determine what weapons they can use as well as their stats. For the most part, because the battle's solved in Soulcalibur combat, stats don't make a huge difference, but they do enough to be noteworthy. Especially at higher levels. So my main character, they created 17 weapon styles designed to be used by these create a soul functions. Some of them are base clones of just your basic weapon styles. You have a sword and a shield that's a clone of Sophia and Cassandra. You have an iron sword, which is a clone of Nightmare and Siegfried. The lance, which is a clone of several weapons from Keelix to actually Astaroth's. So they copy a lot of moves between styles as well, even styles that seem weird.
Fight.
You should really give up.
However, there are a couple styles that are there are a few styles that are kind of unique, but for the most part, they're kind of cheesy.
It was a decent match.
So you know that it was one of the things that I think was not liked by a lot of people, fans of Soulcalibur 2, who picked up the game. But anyway, each of your classes starts out with only one ability they can use, and there's actually a lot of the game that you unlock by playing it that's kind of permanent. So in order to, as one of my viewers pointed out yesterday during one of my runs, during my run yesterday, technically this is kind of sort of a new game plus because I have everything unlocked. It isn't a totally fresh game, but to get a totally fresh game, I'd have to wipe the contents, erase it from my drive every time I wanted to start a new game. I wouldn't just, have to start a new game fresh. I'd have to go into the data on my memory card and delete that to get a fresh memory card, or use a separate memory card every time. And I've decided that isn't worth the hassle for speedrunning. It's a lot easier to have everything unlocked, and besides, then I get access to the better weapons and styles that I wouldn't have access to in a brand new game. There is also, the reason I don't just call it New Game Plus and be done is because there is actually a New Game Plus function. After you win Chronicles of the Sword, you can start again with the same party. You'll skip the tutorial and retain all your levels, but otherwise it's exactly the same. So it's not hugely interesting, but it's a possibility. And so because of that possibility, I don't want to call this New Game Plus.
It was a decent match.
I would probably, if I were to try doing a speedrun where I wipe the data, I would call that something like low percent. Story-wise, I'll go back to the classes in a bit, but story-wise, this is a nation with, this is a continent with 3 different nations on it: the Empire, the Grand Dal Empire, the Kingdom of Dalkia, and the Haltese Republic. Haltese Republic, as it goes into later, used to be a monarchy as well, but the monarchy was recently overthrown and put down by the people, and most of the old royalty got lost. We are cadets in the Academy of Grand Dal Empire, being taught by General Gerardo, general of the whole army. We just had a challenge fight against Debilia, who is the sharpest woman at the Academy, except for us, of course. And now we are having a graduation test against Gerardo's forces to prove our worthiness in combat. And in both of these chronicles, our hyper-intense character's thought narration at the beginning of the chronicle states that, oh, we can't stand to lose. We have to be victorious. Losing is the same as dying, and that applies to mock battles as well as the real battlefield. Okay, whatever. I just find, I think that it's kind of weird that in the brief narration they give, they demonstrate enough thought pattern into it to make that kind of fatalism the very essence of your character's thought, and I think it's actually done just story-wise wise to explain why you can't progress if you lose. Because all these chronicles are pretty simple in that you have to win them to move on to the next chronicle. If you lose a chronicle, there are a number of ways to do that. Some chronicles have special ways to lose. You will end up restarting chronicle, but you keep all the levels you gain. So you can't actually lose a run to anything short of actual, like a power failure or loss of hardware or something, which is one of the nice things about it. You can also save after every chronicle, although I'm going to try never to even load at the save screen because that wastes about a minute. Anyway, there are these two characters here, Xiaoxin and Jinkai, will join your party later on. You do have a number of NPCs or just allied characters in your army, similar to, several other strategy RPG type games that you can put onto the field instead of your custom created characters like I've done here. You always have to create your primary character, but then you have eventually up to 10 slots, 10 total slots, so 9 extra slots you can unlock to have your own soldiers, as well as all the various NPCs that join you. Cutscenes are unskippable.
Of course, only if you manage to defeat me. Battle 1. Fight. Battle 2. Fight.
I choose Dancer as my primary character. Dancer is one of the initial classes you get that you have to level up before you can unlock other classes. They have some of the most horrible stats in the game. However, when you reach level 10, you unlock a second weapon for each of your classes. For level 20 in a class unlocks for that class another weapon. So 10 for the first, 20 for the second, and at 30 you get Gull continuing to do better and better on these early ones. That's nice. At 30 you get to unlock your Soulcalibur. Soulcalibur weaponry. Each character has 2 of the original Soulcalibur characters. As weapons that they can equip, and so the class that can equip the Soul of Xianghua is the Dancer. It's the only class that can. And as you've seen, Xianghua's Hualin spin move, I believe it's normally called, I call it the spin to win, usually, is extremely broken. The AI there are several moves in the game in several different styles that the AI is just not intelligently programmed to block, and this spin move is one of them. It also combos perfectly. Most of the time they will get up just in time to be hit by it, so it becomes a perfect stun lock move, the ultimate in the game. There are a couple of other moves that are also impossible to block, but they cannot string together quite as well into an infinite combo. The next best after it is the Katana's shoulder charge, which you're finally about to witness for the first time. And it leads to aerial combos and stuff. They will occasionally block it, but usually put them in stun enough that I can follow it up. It's not quite as consistent as the Hualin spin, but it does come out a bit faster, and it can be used by Sword Masters, which are the most powerful class in the game. You have 6 base classes. You unlock 6 more advanced classes by leveling them up in Chronicles of the Sword. And then finally, after you've leveled up all of the main classes a large amount, you finally unlock Sword Masters, who can use any of the 17 weapons, but none of the Soulcalibur weapons, which is the one drawback to them. But since Katana's second best, I field 1 Dancer, But since Dancer's stats are horrible, having more than one Dancer later on in the game could be detrimental. I could be wiped out super easy, possibly even one shot by the final boss. So having Sword Masters gives me a little bit more leeway against those kinds of opponents. So there's usually only one way to win each scenario, and it's usually take the main stronghold. There's always only one way to win each Chronicle. Each Chronicle has one objective, which most of the time is take the main citadel. This one, however, is defeat all enemies. So since I have to defeat all enemies, I have to split my forces up to deal with each group. And this is what I found to be the most effective method of dealing with this particular scenario.
I'll take you on anytime you want.
I even, I use bandits because they're generally the fastest at taking citadels and moving across the map. They have the highest overall speed. However, in this particular scenario, in that upper portion, that upper citadel where my leader is at, there's a bit of an extra trick to it because of these really slow knights that are coming up to defend it. If I come at that as a bandit, I will long destroy that stronghold before they reach me. And then I have to fight, as I say, because of the loading times of these battles, I actually end up losing time. Because I have to load up a secondary battle once those two show up, as well as fighting the one who's guarding the citadel to begin with. So by going slower, I actually, very odd thought in a speedrun, but it's a rare instance where going slower actually saves time. Because it saves me from having to issue orders, which as you've seen, pauses the game, so I want to issue as few orders as possible. So that also wastes time. And allows me to fight them all at once. This is a small enough map that being in infantry the rest of the time isn't a huge detriment, especially because as good as bandits are taking strongholds, they actually only deal the same damage to strongholds as infantry do. So I don't lose any time with her attacking the main stronghold. This is the only stronghold I lose time on, and I save it all by fighting them all at once instead of a few at a time. I'll be switching her back to infantry later on. The wall and spin, the spin to win seems probably really broken. It is, but it isn't totally unstoppable. You've already seen points where I have been hit. If the enemy decides to be aggressive while I'm going into the setup of the spin, I will definitely take some damage, and I can be killed rather easily if they're a higher level than me, since Dancer's stats are so bad. Swordsmen, on the other hand, have the ultimate stats. They are technically second in attack to Samurai, but I think even their defense is even better even than the Knights. Their hit points are more than the Knights. I know that they have the most hit points of anyone in the game. So they are, all in all, the very best. Unless there's a specific Soulcalibur weapon I want to use for speedrunning purposes, when you want to do as fast as you can, you want as many Sword Masters as you can get. You know, again, the only reason is by focusing my leader with the spin to win, I can do the most damage over here. So story-wise, we've now graduated from the academy. We're guarding this border post. We've received another unit at the start of this scenario, this Chronicle, as you often will. And bandits have attacked in the middle of the night, so we're counterattacking them. And we're going to find out something interesting about them with the first couple we encounter. Oh, his name is Grandal. He looks like a generic Grandal soldier, just like the ones we've been fighting in our training missions. That's rather odd. Why is a bandit dressed like a Grandal soldier? There must be something significant in that. The storyline in this game is pretty simple, since it was just a game mode designed for to show off Create Soul, but it has it's kind of interesting. You have to read a bit and make a few assumptions to get in really deep, because they hint at a lot of stuff without explaining it, but the implications are pretty clever, and one of them is we go to war in the next scenario because of supposedly we attacked them first. You see, you're supposed to think back to these Grandal soldiers.
I have absolutely no intention.
And then a
of
statement this guy
dying
makes
here.
later on in the game, how he developed a plan to pit Grandal and Dalkia against each other. Right now his name is just question mark, question mark, question mark, question mark. No, he doesn't have amnesia like Terra from Final Fantasy VI. He's just a mysterious figure. Using one of the more unique weapon types, dagger. He has a very unique looking dagger, special for him. But dagger users swing their dagger around in close combat, and they also throw bombs at medium to long range, which are actually pretty interesting weapons. Since this is any percent, I'm trying to complete each Chronicle as fast as possible, which again, most of the time is taking the main citadel. This is one of the maps that I recently came up with other strategies on. One of the fun things of this game is routing out my travel on this map. It's probably the most boring portion to watch while I sit and swing at citadels, but it's really pretty interesting to be thinking about how I can move in order to minimize fights, in order to avoid and clump fights together. All those things I have to do to try to shave seconds or sometimes even minutes off of a particular scenario. Making a wrong move on some of these later ones can cost me minutes at a time. It's kind of surprising to learn all those and relearn them. I have largely played this game without notes. It's simple enough that I can do so, but there are some of these later scenarios where I think I ought to. So now Dalkia has declared war on us, saying that we attack them first. I wonder if this plot with those Grandal soldiers had anything to do with that. Now we're fighting the leader of this invasion force. They were getting clobbered until we showed up to stop them. And here is their leader, Luna, who is going to explain herself to us in another cutscene. We fight her more than any other character. We have to fight her 4 times.
You're certainly a handful. I shall remember your name, as you are the only one who has provided a worthy challenge.
Luna and Abelia both like to think they're a rival, but neither of them is worthy, really. Ringouts do not do automatic wins in Chronicles of the Sword mode, but they do half your maximum life and damage, so you can ring out people to victory. And even if they have more than half health when you ring them out so they don't automatically die, you do enough damage that it's still really good generally to ring people out. One exception is if I'm on a powerful character with my dancer, it spoils my stun lock from the Schwallen spin, so I might end up regretting it later on. But for the most part, it's usually pretty desirable. Fortifying this up in order to protect it against the enemy attack. This clever little trick is going to prevent the enemy from getting at me, because they can't leave via a way that's being attacked. This is a tactic I use at several points during the Chronicles. It's one of my favorite little tactics. Minimize the amount of fights I have to get into. Once again, the objective here is just to take the main stronghold, so all these other guys I can leave alone. Now, Arian, the defending boss here, is unique in that, except for the Soulcalibur characters, who the first one is on this map, Astroth there over on the left, the guy sitting in the lone citadel. He is, except for those Soulcalibur characters actually here, all of these characters can be created using create a soul function, but Arian here is extremely large for no good reason. There are two characters in the game who have extreme height, Arian and then another character you'll encounter much later on in 17. They're just unusually tall, but otherwise their equipment can be used to create copies of anybody here you want to make copies of. If you want to make your own Luna or Abelia or whoever, it's easy enough to do in the create a soul function. But it's just very interesting that guy is very tall. I don't know why. So yeah, the 23 Soulcalibur characters are sprinkled throughout the Chronicles. On Soulcalibur %, I have to fight them in addition to winning a normal way. And in saved a lot of time that time. Much better strategy. Now Abelia's joined up with us, and we have to defend this bridge. Now, as I say, there's only one way to ever win, but there are many ways to lose. You lose by having your main stronghold taken in every Chronicle, except 20 where you don't have one. You always lose if you lose all of your characters. And in this particular scenario, I will also lose if the enemy controls both halves of this bridge. So in other words, if they take this stronghold right here, so since they have guys attacking it immediately, I have to spare one soldier to defend it. So therefore I leave this character here. As you can see, I've based... I like to base... sometimes I like to make my own characters, but a lot of times I also like to base them on other characters from anime or video games or such things. I have a particular fondness for making Final Fantasy characters and other ones from the similar games in my childhood, like Chrono from Chrono Trigger. This time I decided to do a Final Fantasy character from the main crop I played as a kid, which are Final Fantasy 4, 5, 6, 7, and Tactics, actually. So never got into 8 much. I apologize to any 8 fans out there, but it wasn't my kind of game. Although I do find the speedruns of it actually pretty interesting for 8-hour speedruns. In a lot of ways better than like Final Fantasy X speedruns. Even though there are no major glitches in them, just the abusive way you can use junctioning is pretty clever.
Final battle, fight.
But anyway, so now one of the more interesting things about this game is that there are missions on these strongholds, and what they call missions and show each time, are actually these effects that alter the battle. Some of them are really simple, like in this fortress I have Cure protecting me since I'm the defender, so my life regenerates back over time. And you can tell I have it by the green effect on me. Lower level strongholds will affect both the attacker and the defender. While higher level ones are specifically will specifically only affect the defender, or if it's bad, they will affect only the attacker. There are some later on that are extremely annoying and difficult to deal with, and some that are extremely unique that you only see once, or that you might not even get a chance to see.
Battle 1, fight.
For most battles in the game, it follows a pretty standard progress. If you can initiate a battle in the field, if you initiate one with the battle command, you can choose who to fight, even if you're clumped in a group. But if you're attacking a stronghold, with one exception in the entire game, Your leader, if present, will always be the first person in the stronghold, and if not present, it will be the first character in the list of your characters. However, if that character loses and another one comes to the forefront, it won't be the next in line. It tends to go backwards instead. Kind of odd. Now, when you give orders to a character, they will continue on those orders until they die or they enter a Soulcalibur combat. So, one of the things I try to do, as I had to manipulate a bit there, is I try to only have one character in the forefront if I know I'm going to encounter another character in the field. So I only have to reissue orders once because, again, you lose time if you have to, because the game pauses when you issue orders, you lose time if you have to issue multiple orders.
Fight.
The graph is kind of interesting to tell the difference between levels, but it'd be nice if you could actually see the numbers. You can see the numbers through menu manipulation, like you're intended to. Like when I click on them to open the order box, if I use the R1 and R2 buttons, it will scroll through their stats, including their strength, dexterity, their strength, vitality, and agility. But it's the only way you can see those stats. You can't otherwise ever see them. So in a speedrun I'll never see them because I don't want to pause the game just to look at somebody's stats. It's kind of pointless. I have a general idea from seeing the graphs. And this is a manipulation I did. By attacking, pretty much all soldiers are programmed to retreat to the main citadel once it's under attack. The AI programming on these maps is, some of them are very weirdly designed, but everything is manipulated by your movement and the actions that happen in the battle. Some of them are very obscure and it's hard to tell what causes a trigger, but a lot of times are pretty simple, like most soldiers fall back to defend the main citadel when it's in danger. But they also will attempt to protect other important targets, and they have kind of a priorities list. So by attacking that citadel, I draw one guy who's programmed to out in order to defend it instead of coming to attack here, so that's one less guy I have to fight. By far, I do a lot of things to manipulate stuff, but one of the reasons I use the tactics I do is by far the Soulcalibur combat is the biggest time change. When you fight over 100 battles over the course of the game, even on any percent, when I skip as many as possible, you know, the difference between a quick 10-second fight and a grueling 30-second fight really starts to add up. And as many of those I can eliminate, you know, especially with the added load time, the better it is. Goodness. This is going incredibly well, even considering how well I polished some of these early things. I just ran yesterday and got a bunch of golds on these as well. And now I'm getting fresh new golds out of nowhere. This might not be a gold with all the people who have to die. It's going to be close. Still a gold. Nice. So Bilia joined us in the last battle to help protect the bridge. Now we deal with Luna again and her Klesser Pemdo. These oddly named people are her 4 soldiers. They each have a elemental theme to them. And so the 2 times you face them in strongholds, their strongholds are themed to their element. The first one we're going to be fighting is Loopy, who is the fire maiden. And so her citadel gives her at low level they have a lower level citadel in this scenario, and then in Chronicle 11 when we fight him again, they'll have a much higher level stronghold. All goes into those when we get there. But at this low level, it's all guard break. So if you're used to Soulcalibur, guard break. Your weapon crackles electricity, and if the person blocks, they still take no damage, but they are in a exaggerated stun, so they can't immediately follow up an attack. So all of her attacks have that attribute on them, even the weakest and simplest, and her weapon is always crackling with lightning. The next upgrade to that is all unblockable, in which your weapon is wreathed in flames, and as you can see here, guard break attacks that the whirlwind spin, of course, on full cycle. That move has two parts. It actually has several parts. I do the spin first, and then I can come out of the spin with a number of attacks, but by holding B attack, vertical attack plus kick, or triangle circle in this case, although I have it the button combo set to a shoulder button. I go into a spin. I hit it once and I'll just do a single spin and then jump out, but by holding it, it turns into the long double spin with the guard break attachment. That move I love so much. But anyway, Loopy's going to have that all guard break. At higher level, she'll have all unblockable, in which her weapon is wreathed in flames, again, just like it is in normal Soulcalibur when you use all guard break moves, but every single attack is all guard break, or all unblockable in that case. This case, all guard break. I'm rambling a bit. Anyway, you'll see for yourself. And of course, her stronghold is themed for fire. All of these stages, of course, are basic stages you'll see in the normal Soulcalibur game. There's an example of somebody not dying to ring out. That's going a lot worse than it should. Because once again, even though I hit her with ring out, I wasn't able to follow up my combo. That's one of the bad circumstances of it. I kind of have mentioned before, there are Soulcalibur characters spread throughout the Chronicles. The 23 normal characters, not Ul'Kadan, not Abyss, or Night Terror, but the 23 normal ones you can play in story mode with their own unique styles. And they have classes just like other characters. They're level 60, so they're very strong. We can see here. Here's Lizardman. He's level 60 with 399 hit points. He's an assassin for some reason. Which means he has very low hit points, but he has outrageously high attack, higher than anyone except Samurai and Sword Masters. So he does a huge amount of damage. And again, in Soulcalibur percent, I have to seek out and defeat all of 23 of these characters in addition to beating the game normally. So I have to route several different maps differently in order to do that. This one would be simple. I'd run over, beat him, and then come this way. Now the characters on the list. This is Elua of Air. She's in a whirlwind, which is a minor annoyance, especially a weak whirlwind like this. She isn't good at knockbacks, and which takes advantage of the whirlwind, but there are some characters later on who have much worse whirlwind stages, although I don't think I'm going to fight any of them, because the worst ones are Talim and Yun Sung and their map in Chronicles 16. They have a really horrible whirlwind, and you have to fight both of them, so it's one of the tougher battles in the game. Luckily, since this is any percent, I can skip it. But the other two strongholds are much worse. Quake, where AG of Earth causes you to shake every 3 seconds. It does a countdown, and then if you aren't guard crouch blocking or jumping in the air, you get hit by the quake and you're stagger stunned and vulnerable to attack. Ice, you have no stopping physics, so you go sliding around the map. It's one of the very worst missions in the game. Hildo of Water uses that, and even though she's pretty wimpy, it's still a very, very annoying tactic, so I don't want to face it. So I come up this way instead, and once again, I have to defeat all 4 of the Cluster Pemdo to advance the stage. So this is the easiest way to get the 2 of the 4 plus Luna all together at once. So I can defeat them in one go and avoid the bad strongholds.
So we meet again. Now, it's time to collect on your debts.
Battle 1. Fight.
This one's going a lot better than yesterday. Occasionally, the quests for Pimdo tend to be easy, but occasionally certain of them can just decide to be extra aggressive. Or I can make bad mistakes like that. But I lost against Elua, which almost never happens yesterday, so that was a misclick. I didn't quite go into my spin correctly, which left me vulnerable. Although again, it also only happened because she decided to be aggressive at that moment. Sometimes, a lot of times, they'll just stand around, and that's always preferable, but not always a bad thing for my main character to lose in the final Citadel, though. I lose a tiny bit of time, but I also get more experience for some of my other lower level characters, which is good for later on in the game. I'm only going to lose about 20 seconds or so. Maybe not even that much, because the rest of the scenario went pretty well. Yeah, probably 10 to 15 seconds. Yeah, closer to the 20 again. Oh well. Death animations on the field are one of the worst time losses, actually, weirdly enough. So we've been beating the crap out of out of Dalkia, but now all of a sudden, Haltice's Republic has declared war on us, probably to trying to take advantage of our weakness. After fighting Dalkia so much, they can take the spoils. So Abilia has been left in charge of our largely victorious invading forces of Dalkia. All that's left is for her to put a bow on that invasion. And so she gets all the glory while we have to rush off to defend against Haltice with our spent troops. General Gerardo decides to take this moment to join us and help us out, though. So even though he's general of the whole Grand All Army, he's decided to remit himself under our command. Okay, sure, whatever. Glad to have you along. He's level 15, so he's really strong at this stage of the game. And he's a knight, as you saw, he's a knight with lance, which is a pretty good weapon overall. When you're playing the game casually, a lot of your high-level classes are good to have. Good to use early on in order to give you a leg up, because each of these characters also has a class, but they don't necessarily follow the same order of what you can create. So the first character you get is Aeneas, who's a knight with a lance, so he's really good to use early on, since knights have such great stats, very high hit points in defense, and their agility and attack are not by any means bad. It's better than several of the beginning characters, even the offensive focused one. Soulcalibur character in this map is Rock, who's standing up top. All the Soulcalibur characters are in their secondary outfits, some of which they made especially interesting in this game. Rock is one of them. He has this big mammoth head hat. I ordered the wrong person. Oh well. I'm fortifying up these citadels because these guys are programmed largely to chase after. I'm not sure if it's just my leader or it's my main force, but you know where I have the most units at, but not the person I was expecting to send, but not entirely bad, especially if I win. I should gain a couple levels of experience with this character, which is good. Especially as I've narrowed down my time on these, I end up using more and more fights just on my leader, so some of my characters end up grossly underleveled by the end of the game. One of the things I probably need to do once I've routed everything else is to try and route out who gets involved in fights first. so I can spread my experience around a little and give everyone a bit more reliable. As now it comes raining down. See, there's Rock. Rock is a gladiator rather than a barbarian, which is interesting. But they gave the barbarian to Astaroth a Nightmare. I guess because Nightmare, they weren't very consistent in the classes they gave. You know, they assigned a class to 2 different characters each. Because there's 23 and 12 classes, they had to repeat 1 character. They chose Tira. She is both in Thief and Assassin. When you encounter her in the game, she's an assassin because that's a much better class. Thieves are even more garbage than dancers are because they have no good weapons. But stats are largely the same. But some of them seem to be consistent, like, okay, Nightmare's a barbarian because Iron Sword is similar to Nightmare's giant sword weapon. That makes sense. But Sword and Shield is the property of Gladiator, and yet Gladiator is Sungmin and Rock rather than Sage is where both Cassandra and Sophitia are. So it's an inconsistency. Kind of bothers me a little because I'm OCD about certain kinds of consistencies and things, and the fact that that isn't consistent drives me nuts. So here's our first instance of ice. It's lots of fun. You can see me sliding there. Luckily, the AI for these guys isn't super great, so they usually will stay away from the edge for me so I don't go sliding off the edge very easily. But sometimes things can just go wrong. Starting to see the difference in stats on higher level characters. Early on I was 2 and 3 shotting guys. Also the difference in classes. She's a knight, so her defense is really good, so it takes me several hits to take them. Versus where early on I was 2 and 3 shotting some basic guys, even knights, it took me no more than 4 hits. If they were roughly my level. Your stats start in the range of about 50 to 100-ish usually. I think your Swordmasters start with 120 in attack and defense and 108 in agility, so that just gives you an idea of how significant that stat difference is. But then you don't always gain a point per level, but you do gain a few more often, so it actually really starts building up a difference by this point. And you do gain hit points every level, and some significantly more, and so that's where it starts to take a lot longer to kill certain enemies, where your high level characters will really dominate your low level ones if you don't play perfectly. So Halfest, the leader, we just fought, but all of a sudden it's implied that he is being killed by this strange person named Mooncalf who just showed up, and she says the country needs to be destroyed, but we won't be the ones to do it. How mysterious. What on earth is going on here? Some of this dialogue is so greatly translated too. After Mooncalf apparently kills Halfest and does her spiel, Gerardo's like, ah. And then one of the soldiers says, what's up? And he's like, no, I was just wondering who that was. Like, that's what you have to say about her? Very occasionally, Mooncalf can be really bad.
It looks like I won today, but who knows what'll happen next time.
So we're about to be attacked by Melita, which was a province of the Haltese Republic, but now its provincial leader, whoever he is, has declared himself king, Kingdom of New Kingdom Melita, and rose up in rebellion against Haltese, taking advantage of our invasion to fan the flames of their rebellion, as it were. And now they're starting to slaughter all the Haltese soldiers. And we have decided, we never speak, we're a silent hero like Link and Chrono and others, but so all of our words and actions are implied by the other character's interaction with us. probably should have ordered them all the way. It would have worked out better. Oh well. But from Gerardo's comments, it's implied that we've decided to strike against the Melita forces and save these poor Haltese soldiers who are here. There are 5 of them on the map. 3 of them are unique, 2 of them are generic. These 2, Lurage and Canon, if I save them by running into them, they will join my party later on. Of course, that doesn't matter in this mode. So I just want to get to the main citadel as quick as possible. I lose if 3 of them die, but by this strategy I go with, only 1 of them dies. So I'm very safe. I don't actually have to save 3 in order to complete the scenario. I just have to prevent 3 from dying. So I do that just by running straight down the middle here to take the main citadel. Ends up working a lot better than I thought it would. Before I used to be routing around, saving 3 minimum. But by doing that, none of them end up dying, and I finally thought about it. I was like, is anybody going to actually die? Maybe I lose Lurage if I ignore him. There's the 3rd character, Alien. It doesn't matter if you save her or not. She joins you. She's the leader of the group and has a conversation with you. At the end of it, or with Gerardo rather, on your behalf. It's like, what the heck are you doing? It's like, you actually tried to save us. What kind of person in this war-torn, age goes for it's a bleeding heart? But oh well, we're going to join you. And then she also rejoins automatically later on. All semi-complicated kind of stuff, but
Final battle, fight.
It looks like I got lucky.
But so I'm only going to be saving the 1 as I now begin the battle against Melita, which lasts good 3 full scenarios, 8, 9, and 10. Now hopefully this will still work out. I don't know though, I might need to send my guys further on. If so, this will be a bit of a time loss. Yep, he made it in. I needed to go farther. It's a bit of a foolish thing. Like I say, starting a battle oftentimes, well, it always ends orders. So usually I try to have only 1 person have their orders ended, but they had to stop anyway, just to have their orders ended. So sending them all into the combat would have put them closer. With this strategy, when it's working optimally, I never fight this guy because I take that stronghold before he gets in there, but it's a near thing. This is a whirlwind, and that's an example of it going weird. So I'm going to lose a tiny bit of time on this scenario, despite the excellent combats. The interesting thing about it is, I guess because of the number of guys I fight right there, it's a good 30-second time save over my old strategy, but I did have it routed out so well to save the 3 guys up here that oh, I actually have an even better strategy too. I forgot about. It works better. I go through, save Lurage, hit there, and just run down. Then I avoid taking that citadel out entirely. That's actually the best strategy. I think, I'm trying to remember. Maybe it doesn't work out. I think I might have tried it, but it doesn't work out because, oh, that was for my 100% strat. Yeah, if I try to do it here, they'll all come running up and they don't actually clump as easily, so it's not as big a time save as I thought. It ends up not saving time. There's so many little things on some of these maps. It's a lot of fun. Up there way at the top is Setska. Just use the Soulcalibur character in that far northern citadel all alone. None of the Soulcalibur characters move or intentionally get involved in combat. They're there just as optional, you know, showing off, I can beat the Soulcalibur characters, yeah, and get lots of experience because they're level 60. So Soulcalibur percent actually adds a large amount of levels to me because the Soulcalibur characters give so much XP. And of course, 100% I have much better levels. But especially in any percent, the levels of my other characters other than my main one are really much falling behind because so much of the time you know, I'm in a clustered group and only my main character fights. Poor Laraje. R.I.P. Laraje. This scenario was where I discovered that bandits were really good because I was trying very hard to save all 5 soldiers and I could never do it. But then, so finally I studied what information was given about the different unit types. I always used infantry because they were just generic. I thought, I'll stick to generic. They should be useful in all circumstances. But then I, you know, was trying to figure out a way to get to them faster. I'm like, I need to move faster, I need to attack buildings. Oh, bandits do both. Maybe they're good. And since then, I've never gone back. Except for specific strategies where I need infantry. I always use bandits both casually and in speedrun because they just go about the map so much faster. The fact that they're really horrible at fighting in the field is pointless since most of the time I prefer to and do really win faster by using Soulcalibur combat anyway.
It was a decent match.
This is the first of 3 battles with Heil. His stronghold bonus gets progressively worse each time. Okay, here's one of the moments of truth. Yep, there's my small time loss. For fighting that battle I shouldn't have fought. This is another interesting Chronicle because my objective is once again to defeat all enemies, not just the main stronghold. It's also the first time I get 5 characters. 5 characters is the maximum you're ever allowed to field. Of course, scenarios like this, you have to fight a lot more enemies. Kind of just the standard fare they give you in games. 1 man against an army or a small force against an army.
Final battle, fight.
It's over. Where are you going? It's over.
Kind of makes it nice for the speedrun because, okay. Weapons in this game don't have stats, they have properties. And you notice I should have had a couple of ring outs there, but the weapon that Marid there is wielding actually helps prevent ring outs. It only works randomly, it doesn't do it every time, but it's the kind of random that always favors the computer. When an AI character has it, it works every time, and then when you're wielding it, you still get hit by ring outs all the time. The usual. So once again, I split up my forces in this one just to manipulate the AI to come after me. Because otherwise I have to chase them down if I try to go in a full group. And I end up losing a lot of time when I do that incorrectly. So there are also 2 different colors on the map. Melita has allied itself with Dalkia, and the main force of the Dalkian soldiers facing us is Luna and her Cluster Pemdo. They've come to get revenge on us. So obviously Abelia isn't doing too well in Dalkia. Yeah, I'm gonna have you go. So we'll get back to that later. First we have to deal with Melita and these Dalkian soldiers, though. Rather convenient for us this time that we get to fight Luna and her group on our terms rather than having to fight them in horrible citadels.
Battle 1. Fight.
There's a very slight time win for knocking somebody out of the ring, whether or not it's a ring out or they're already dead when they go flying off. If it happens immediately when they die, because going off for some reason falling out of the ring accelerates the time it takes to load up the next scenario by about, or the next character coming in, or the end battle sequence by about a second, half a second.
3. Fight.
So the more ring outs I can get, the better. Means that I've gotten a lot better, largely, at using the two different strategies I can use after using shoulder charge to knock somebody into the air. I can either attempt to do a lot of damage with several follow-up hits, aerial combo thing, air juggling, or I can do my jumping spin kick to send them flying forward, hopefully towards the edge of the ring. Because if I can get the ring out, of course, it's a lot faster. She was annoying today.
Did you really expect to get the better of my blade?
But after I finally developed the jumping spin kick strategy and started utilizing that, I tended to use it even on cage matches where I can't ring somebody out because there's just walls all around us. And I realized, wait, that strategy doesn't work well. I don't do nearly as much damage. I have to run back up at him. So as I say, now I've gotten better at differentiating between the two moments, when it actually saves time and when it doesn't.
Decisive battle.
Started spreading out my character creation too. I usually like to focus on characters for my sword masters who actually use katanas, so it seems appropriate. Characters like Cyan and Chrono, but there's only so many who only use katana, so do some more interesting characters. Maybe sometime I'll do the 5 Sailor Scouts as my army.
Battle 2. Fight.
That's a moment where I should have probably just done air combos though, because he was so weak. I still have those occasionally, but a lot less than I used to.
Battle 3.
One of the things I always do with my character creation though is I usually go have a female leader, because I think the dancer at the Soul of Shanghua just looks a lot better as a female than as a male. And then I like to alternate from there, female, male, female, male, female, for my 5 characters.
Battle 4. Fight.
Just one of those things, my OCD liking particular kinds of order.
Final battle. Fight.
Take good care of yourself.
Nope, he won't quite.
Decisive battle.
Oh well. That's a small improvement I can make to this scenario, is once again going a little slower.
Fight.
You should really give up.
Good move and a good weapon. Soul of Xianghua, as I say, they have attributes, not stats, but the Soul of Xianghua does increase attack as one of its attributes, and it increases it by a fairly significant amount. So even though I'm a dancer, well, a dancer's attack is greater than their defense anyway, so if I'm fighting a dancer of, you know, even one decently higher level than me, if you know, they have a load of defense that, between the power of my attack and the power of my sword, I do a huge amount of damage.
You should really give up.
There's Heil. So all unblockable.
Did you enjoy
I love
my
that one.
dance?
All unblockable normally would be kind of troublesome, since again, you know, you can't block a single attack. All you can do is dodge and try and counterattack. Since I'm very aggressive anyway and have a couple of decent dodging moves, it's not too hard for me to deal with all unblockable.
Final battle. Fight.
It's over. It's over. It's over.
Ring out.
See that?
Okay. So in order to gold this, I do have to get that guy out, but this is still much better. This was my first major time loss. Well, 6 I lost even more time yesterday than I did today, but I lost a minute 3 times due to not properly routing the location of my characters. This one I did a lot better on. Just need to remember to slightly delay my attack on that citadel so that that 4th guy can make it in and reduce the number of battles I have to load by 1. This is the scenario that is so much easier on any percent than any other. No. A lot of the scenarios are easier on any percent because I avoid the Soulcalibur characters present, but this one has the very worst Soulcalibur character you can face, and so not having to face her makes the whole scenario so much better. It's enough of a pain as it is. Some rather unique things here. Sungmina is the character inside of this stronghold, and it has ice. Sungmina's, besides being a level 60 gladiator, which has really good stats, she's also programmed to take advantage of the ice and the fact that you slide even if you, for instance, block her attack. And in a fairly small clock tower map with a wide open circular ring, it's extremely easy to get hit by ring out. Anti-ring out weapons are almost useless against it as well. And you have to burn through so much of her hit points, but it's hard to get the usual combos to work on her because of how the ice makes you slide around. So I can very well, if I get unlucky, lose even three sword masters to her just by sliding off the ring continually. Such a huge pain. No other Soulcalibur character isn't nearly as bad a mission condition. But this stronghold here is interesting because it's offense down, which is kind of annoying. You have to fight 2 bosses and a unique character. If I went another way, I'd probably fight the unique character off to the right if I were doing any 100%. But so I run straight down the middle. She rushes to defend most of the time. Sometimes, in extreme circumstances, oddly, she chooses to head down south and attack instead. My citadels instead. Don't know why.
A pathetic cur. like you dares to take on this country?
So this is Demuth, the supposed king of Moletta. But he's not the final boss here because he's a manipulated stooge, as we're about to find out. We heard some conversation early on that I skipped through at the beginning of the scenario about Chester. Or question mark, question mark, question mark, question mark. Who, with that name being that and the face that you can barely see in the speech portraits, would seem to indicate that he's the same bandit who we dealt with in Chronicle 3 who ran away. And he's going to confirm that and what his strategies are when we encounter him at the very end of the scenario. But so, for King Demuth is a manipulated stooge, and so defeating him is not the end of this chronicle. If so, it would be a super easy chronicle.
You should really give up.
Battle 3, fight!
God, Heil is being mean today. This is bad. Okay, there we go. Now he's mine.
Fight!
You should really give up. I'm sorry, but I must move on.
So the Stronghold gives offense down, which means I do a lot less damage, and you can very much see that against Heil. Heil has exceptionally high stats as well. You can never see the stats of the enemies, but you can definitely get a feel for them and know that even that certain of the high-level boss NPCs have stats outside of what you would expect for a character of their level and class. Interestingly, the Soulcalibur characters, I believe, follow the normal rules. If you have a level 60 character, you'll have the same stats as they will. Because I guess being level 60 and wielding a Soulcalibur weapon is good enough on its own. I'm going to lose a little bit of time here for safety. Well, not really. This is how I normally do this particular part. I may run out after, depending on how well my hit points are after this. One of the interesting things about the unit system is there are squares. You may have noticed when I encounter other units that I actually might stand around waiting for a second while they come running up to me. It's because there are actual squares in the game that your characters occupy. And so if an enemy is moving into a square, even though there seem to be several pixels between us, because they're moving into that square, I can't move into that square. So I have to wait for them to enter it. And once they fully entered it, then we begin striking each other. By the same token, you can fit up to 5 characters from the same faction into a square. So you can have more than 5 characters on a side in battle, that is on the enemy side, because you never get more than 5. But they have to be coming from different directions. So since all these guys are running down the straight area, those 3 guys coming in behind who are all knights and really slow, they will not be able to go into the combat, even attack the citadel or anything, until I've dealt with these 5. So I can't wait and just clump them all up into a group of 8.
You should really give up.
Battle 4, fight!
This girl's trying to be aggressive. Luckily, she's attacking high.
You should really.
Battle 5, fight!
It's over.
The very rare cheese. Yeah, and sometimes even against this, the AI can just decide it's going to stop you. I'm going to lose time on this one just because of stubborn enemies.
You should really. It looks like I
But I'm far enough ahead. I should very easily PB, and a sub 310 is still very much on the table. Especially since I've studied where I messed up on Chronicles of 12 and 15 yesterday, so I won't make the same mistakes. Reorder issues to all three of them. Oh well. So yeah, I might lose 20 seconds or so on this one. Good thing I can afford to.
Battle 1. Fight.
You should.
Final battle. Fight.
Wait, there were only two? Oh man. I'm gonna have to load another one. That's gonna lose me another 40 seconds or so. I might lose a minute here. Between all the combats and everything else. Yep. Oh, so finicky. Oh well.
One. Fight.
Well, it just gives me more to improve on at later times. My sum of best right now is the 303. And that was before I did all these golds, so I very much sub 3 hours is a possibility. Kirkus is one of the characters who automatically starts battle with you when you encounter him, rather than having to do it yourself, and you're not allowed to try and defeat him in the open field. So that's I find those convenient, since I generally prefer to fight in Soulcalibur combat anyway. It's tends to be a little bit quicker and more reliable, even with the load times. Depending on the situation, there are just too many enemies to face in a lot of circumstances to try and rely on it in most scenarios, especially since you can't fight people in that kind of combat when you go into a stronghold, so. These two citadels are two of the most annoying ones in the game. It's a place, I guess, for all those units to hide. That's the primary purpose of it, is that those 8 guys that come charging out after you take the central citadel there. There are some citadels that don't break down when in level. As you notice, you conquer a citadel, it goes down a level. Big enemy main strongholds don't, which usually doesn't matter because it's the end of the scenario anyway most of the time. But certain ones, like the bridges from Chronicle 4, or 5, Chronicle 5, as well as this one here in this Chronicle, they don't decrease when you take them. It's convenient when those happen, because when you have those strongholds, because if you do die, you revive at the closest level 3 or higher citadel. So if all you have is your main citadel, it's your main citadel. Otherwise, certain Chronicles, if I end up losing early enough with a character, I will rebuild it with the characters that do conquer it so I can revive there.
All right.
Saves a bit of time, or at least lessens the amount of time loss I get for losing a character, because a lot of the time it's a lot more convenient.
Plan of pitting Grandal and Dalkia against one another, and then rise to power during
It's pretty harmful time to lose characters.
Because of your unexpected meddling, my plan is in ruins. You will pay.
So now we learn his name, Chester, and
One, fight.
the introduction to the game explains that this is called the Mantis War, and that he is the guy who manipulated it, but we are the hero who saved Grandal from its machinations, and it's just doing by conquering everybody in self-defense. It's really brilliant, you know, basic kind of super basic RPG stuff, especially for a war RPG. But yeah, Chester had this brilliant plan of building a kingdom for his own out of chaos by having the other nations go to war. But we just happen to be way too good at wiping out Dalkia and Melita and Haltis for a bit. So now we have to go back and rescue Abilia from the rest of the Dalkian forces, because she's pretty much been useless while we've been busy conquering a whole other country. So now our final battle with Luna and the Klesser Pemdo. This is the one Chronicle which is exactly the same in every category, because there's just 5 strongholds, 5 characters all in a line. So I have to take them all out. We start with Lupi again, a fire, so she has Cruel Sword. All of these strongholds have a special unique mission, which is a combination of 2 other missions, many of which we haven't even seen before. Lupi of Fire has Cruel Sword, which is both all unblockable as well as Blast. Blast is kind of insignificant, even more so than Fire, because it means that her knockback attacks do an extreme amount of knockback. She doesn't use as many with the Lance as you would think she might be able to, though. And of course, unless things go horribly wrong, she tends not to hit me much anyway, so since I can combo her to death. There we go. That's the Lupi I like to see.
It looks like I won today, but who knows what'll happen next time.
Next up we have Hildo of Water. She has Sacred Field, which is a combination of both ice, and because water is often, you know, the element of life and is associated with healing magic in a lot of RPGs, especially Japanese ones, she has Cure as well, which again is a very minor annoyance. There are a few times where having Cure can actually lose me 5 to 10 seconds if it has given a character enough health to barely survive a ring out, or make me do another hit on them than I would. But it's really hard to tell when those happen, and they're, you know, rare enough and insignificant enough that it doesn't matter that much, really.
Battle 1, fight.
Whoops. The ice is a problem, though. But Hildo is being nice today.
You should really give up.
One of the interesting things about ring outs is that only one person is allowed to ring out. You can double KO by hitting each other at the exact same time to do knockout damage. They are the worst possible things that can happen in Chronicles of the Sword, because you defeat the enemy, but you get experience as if you lost, and you have to recover. So you don't get hardly any experience, and you don't get the victory experience. Because there's a limited number of people, there's a limited number of experience in the game. So the only way to grind is to either is to lose, either by losing individual matches so you get a fraction of the experience and then you'll still get the full amount when you do win, or by losing a scenario in order to replay it and fight and kill people all over again to get the experience. You can grind yourself up by constantly losing a Chronicle. It's the only way to grind in this game, which is one of the nice things about it. It's one of the few pseudo RPGs that does not have any grinding because it's impossible to grind, you know, without deliberately losing time, and it's not worth it because levels don't mean that much. Anyway, here we have Elua of Air. She has Holy Wings, which I can never remember the name of the aerial lift or something. It's what the other one's called, but it's Whirlwind and that. If she does an attack that would knock me into the air, it can knock me way up into the air. She almost never uses those types of moves though, and today she's decided to be really mean. Among other things, she's not getting, because of the whirlwind, I'm getting pushed away, and she's not getting up in the right position to get hit, so that's a problem. Still a minor annoyance. She rarely is much of a problem. She wouldn't have been a problem at all if not for the whirlwind. So whirlwind's annoying, but there are worse ones. But anyway, you can't have two people ring out. Somebody goes over by a tinieth millisecond quicker or a tiny pixel over the edge first and triggers the ring out, and then the other person, even if they seem to go off simultaneously, do not. And it doesn't count as a ring out for them, even if it wouldn't be a killing ring out. So, okay, this is Ag of Earth, who has the very worst mission in the entire game, Impregnable. It is Quake, which she had before, combined with something called Guardian Force that we haven't encountered yet, but we will twice more. Guardian Force prevents you from being affected by anything. You take damage if you are hit and are not blocking, but whether you're blocking or not, when you hit the enemy, as you're going to see, they don't care. They don't react, they don't stun, they don't stagger. Attack throws are the only thing that affect them, and that's hard to trigger. Most attack throws only trigger on counter hits, so they're hard to do. When I'm in the air, I'm not affected by Quake, so if I can get that off, it's good. Luckily, she's fairly weak and her weapon does damage to her. But that's a usual unfortunate thing. I usually lose at least one person in this. If I can get off a fight without losing a single character, which is rare, that's how I can get a gold now. But I don't even use my main character because that's not worth it to try. But luckily she loses her health every time she even attacks, so eventually I'll win just by simple attrition. See? She knocked herself out. The Dancer doesn't have enough stats to survive or do enough damage. All of my damage requires me to hit her in stun lock, and since I can't do that, all of my very heavy hits she'll hit me before I have a chance to really use them consistently. So I don't even waste the time by having her try to fight. That was pretty average. 1.5 characters to defeat her. We'll end up taking the Citadel just after Bart's respawns, so it wouldn't be worth it to build up the Citadel and try and have him rejoin the fight. I don't need him. Again, it's a major time save if I don't lose a character, because then I don't have the death animation. I have one other character whacking at that Citadel to make it go down faster. I don't have to reload my second character coming in. All those things add up when you lose characters. So, if I get the super duper ultra optimized with a nearly perfect run, it'll be at the point where if I lose a character almost ever, I immediately have to reset,
So you've come.
or I won't get a PB.
This time, it will not be like our previous encounters. See if you can defeat.
So you've come, she says. The first of 3 characters in a very short period of Chronicles to say that. And yes, she has Soulcalibur. Somehow Soulcalibur is involved in this. The prologue says as much, that this is a tale of the two swords. How they get involved, they never explain their backstory, how close it is to the original, to the actual, you know, real story of the games. Soulcalibur and Soul Edge. This is like a fictional world, but somehow Soulcalibur and Soul Edge are around. Luna has Soulcalibur for some reason. Slightly comes into play later in the game, although never in a way that affects the speedrun. Still had a pretty good, how on earth did I gold that while losing a character? Did my other fights go that well? Just Luna went that well? Okay. Alright, alrighty, let's try this. This is one of the tricky ones that I don't always remember my optimal strategy, and I probably ought to do notes, but I just never bother. I did really horrible on it yesterday, though, so I decided to... So I studied my previous PBs in order to get a better idea of the strategies I was using, and this seemed to be the strategy that worked out the very best. I have enemies coming in from all sides. It's a very weird scenario, because I have one citadel way over here, past one of theirs, one scenario way over there, past another one of theirs. Soulcalibur characters on either side of this map. Yeah, a couple coming in this way. On the far right is Cassandra, who is a sage in this game. Got which character I had again. It's always bad when I forget which character I'm fighting with, since they totally different movesets.
Battle 2. Fight.
Of all things, the biggest problem I have with the 17 custom weapons in this game is that they do not have a taunt command. Except for the sword and shield, which actually has an important move set. They call lightning down from the sky as if they're He-Man or something, and that empowers some of their other attacks. But otherwise, using guard plus kick, which is the taunt command for the Soulcalibur characters, does their taunt. And nobody else cares.
Decisive battle.
But it doesn't do it for any of... There is no taunt command for any of those other custom weapons that they give for the custom characters. Create a Soul. Only for the original Soulcalibur characters. There's Bomb in action. I just hate standing around at the end of a battle. I like to do something, and so a taunt is a fun thing to do.
Battle 2. Fight.
I also like hearing random weird dialogue, even though it's the same every time. I just like hearing that line. There are a lot of interesting things about the voices in this game. There's actually a lot more variety than there is in Soulcalibur's 4 and 5, because even though there are only 4 voices per gender as opposed to the 6 they give you there, rather than just editing the pitch and tone, you actually change the lines of dialogue they use by adjusting alignment using custom clothing.
It looks like I got lucky.
So you can do work to manipulate what lines of dialogue are used based on that. Have a lot more variety in the lines you hear and the things that people say. Wonder what I'm doing differently though. I watched my gold split run of this. I did apparently this exact same strategy, and one person holding back, 2 each on the bottom and top versions of that, yet several of the guys went different directions. Good, that's what I want. Still, this should save a lot of time based on yesterday's, which was going almost as well as this one, except for screw-ups I had on Chronicles 9, 12, and 15. I already fixed the screw-up on 9. So if I can reduce the amount of time I lose on this one, and reduce the amount of time that I lose on 15, I should very easily PB. Shooting for a 310. If I can get something crazy like a sub 3.5, that'd be even more amazing.
One, fight.
Just should have done damage.
Battle 2, fight.
This is the final battle against Dalkia. We're at their capital. There's some very strange dialogue in the Chronicles preview about General Gerardo's double being tossed over the side of the walls and not having the courage to face Aurelia. They don't go into detail about that. Also leads to weird portions of conversation later, or weird understanding of it. Just some weird stuff going on I don't understand. Again, you know, similar to Final Fantasy Tactics, the translations in this particular mode are so subpar that they do leave a lot of unanswered questions about things. The opening line is that we see the body of the Emperor's double dumped over the side, and Gerardo says, "So the Emperor doesn't have courage to face Her Majesty. And then it's up to you, Rydia in this case. You need to seize the future with your own hands." Then later on it is implied that, no, I'll wait till we get there. Semi-spoilers if we're following along the story, learning it from watching the speedrun. So it'll be remembered better later. But just something to keep in mind in that line. I wonder if it has anything to do with that upcoming dialogue or not. I don't know for certain. So anyway, just a couple battles left. Once again, delaying actions in order to minimize the number of orders I need to give. One of the nice things about the Mirosame is that one of the disadvantages of it is it's one of the few ultimate weapons with 4 properties in which one of them is negative. It does drain my life slowly over time. However, it's also extremely strong. It raises attack and continues raising attack as time goes on in the battle, even more. And it, of course, life drains from the enemy. So I do damage, I get life back. So that really offsets the life drain on the sword. The one thing it does is it prevents me from getting perfects in most circumstances, because for some reason, the very final hit does not give your life back. Adding your life back is scripted to happen after the damage is dealt, and the immediate thing that happens as soon as somebody's life is depleted or they go to a ring out is that the battle ends and all possible damage or action is ceased. It's pretty much how they prevent double ring outs from happening. I'm sure it works the same way. So because of that, I'll often be at like 280 out of 281. There are some times where with a secondary attack will hit immediately after I've already hit with a life drain to go to full life, and it has not quite done the frame to take my health down, I guess.
One, fight.
But it's a pretty minor thing since I don't care that much about perfects. Rowan here is the general of the Dalkian army. This was technically the second time we're supposed to have fought him. We're supposed to fight him back in Chronicle 5, but his AI is really weird and he wanders back and forth, and based on the way I play, he never enters into a citadel to fight me. He tries to come back after me when I'm taking the citadel, but because he has to get through one of my strongholds, he's a cavalry, so he does horrible damage to it, and so he never reaches me. He also has a unique lance. The sacrifice there is really cool looking. It's one of my favorites, at least in appearance. Not a great weapon, really. Although its reach is probably the highest reach of any weapon in the game. It's unbelievable. About halfway done with the run. Act 12, because of the length of the later Chronicles, Chronicle 12 is pretty much the halfway point of the run, roughly. So now we're going to face Aurelia, the Queen of Dalkia, and one of the most useless bosses in the game. She is so easy. I say that every time, and she's so easy, she never even curses me. She sometimes does a hit or two of damage to me. I don't think I've ever lost to Aurelia in any playthrough of this game with a single character, no matter how beat up. I'd have to deliberately lose, I think.
So,
Just
you've
like
come.
Luna said.
Worthless servant of strife, you shall pay with your blood. For daring to defy me!
Battle 1, fight.
You don't get to see what class she is because of the cutscene, so I have no idea, but she must be a weak class. Ninja, I don't know, dancer? Jeez. Dancers, no, dancers can't use sickle. Who else uses sickle? Maybe assassin? I don't know. Yeah, not gonna gold, but it's still a good segment. A few too many weird things happened to gold, but much better than yesterday's, that's for certain. Okay, so we've conquered all the nations except for Grandal. It's the only thing left. So what is there left to fight for 8 Chronicles? Oh, well, a year has passed. We're now the general in charge of every army since we're the hero. We lose all of our main characters, actually. All of our previous army got stripped from us. Abelia has been reassigned to us, and we get 3 brand new characters. But General Gerardo has declared a revolution, a rebellion. And so we are the leader as the general of the whole army. We are the anti-rebel task force commander. So we have to go deal with these purple rebels. Sure, General Gerardo must have a reason, but because we are samurai code of honor stupid, absolutely obey the Lord no matter what, we have to go out and kill General Gerardo, even though we you know, worship our old teacher, and we're sure he must have a reason. Abilia is really major Samurai Code of Honor stupid, of course. She is death to all enemies of Grandal, even if it's General Gerardo, even if it's my own mother or father. That's never in the game, but that's definitely the sense you get of her. A couple of Spoonie Bards in this chronicle. I always just call them that. I think they're rather amusing looking male dancers who use tambourines.
Battle 1. Fight.
Here's Spoonie Bard number 1.
Battle 2. Fight.
I have no words. This is a low-level cure, so as you can see, it's affecting both of us, or I should say a low-level stronghold with the cure effect. 3 Soulcalibur characters in this map, 2 of which are together, Keelik and Shangwa are in the very bottom. It makes this one of the, along with Chronicle 10, one of the more annoying chronicles on Soulcalibur, or 100%, because I have to lose a lot of time by, usually for safety, sending 2 characters down that southern route rather than just one. And it's so far out of the way I have to come running back. That wastes so much time. Maxi is in here. He's the 3rd character. So Keelik, Shangwa, and Maxi, naturally they'd be together. Otherwise, the final boss in this scenario is actually one of the harder ones in the game, just because of the mission. It separates a horrible mission we haven't seen yet. It's actually even worse than Whirlwind. Even though Whirlwind moves you in a circle, so it kind of disrupts movement style abilities like the ones that I use a lot. Movement style techniques, I should say. The separate is so powerful on this on that particular stronghold that it's just horrible to deal with. Here's Spoonie Bard number 2. Not as bad as Alberic, but still, the lion print loincloth and the very funky purple and bald with the weird hat, and he's, you know, a dancer with tambourines. I would question what they were thinking, but I probably don't want to know, so whatever. Pretty is going to take some hits here, but by moving just outside the Citadel, I can at least avoid fighting that other character right there. So I only fight 3 instead of 4. It's a minor time save, but worth about 15-20 seconds or so. More if I have a bad fight against that particular character for some reason, which sometimes happens. And you can see I took a fairly significant amount of damage while not dealing any, just from that one encounter. Barely survived the ring out. That's the other thing you can do, is do Soul Charge. I'm actually kind of glad that they're bringing Soul Charge back to Soulcalibur 6. I never used it, but still, it's kind of just an iconic ability. Of course, what I'm really hoping for in upcoming Soulcalibur 6 is another Chronicles of the Sword mode, or something similar. Weapon Master was a similar RPG-like story mode. The only problem with Weapon Master in Soulcalibur 2, I think, was that since you didn't have custom characters, you were, you know, who you actually were was negligible, since you could switch characters at any point in the story. You weren't even a pseudo Keelik or whatever, because you could change from Keelik to Sungmina, and then to Nightmare, and then to Nikrid or Voldo, you know, whoever. and so there wasn't as much of a feel of this is my character doing things. But having a Weapon Master mode where you just have one character wandering around doing missions and leveling up and doing it with the character you create the entire time, that would be a lot of fun as well. So I'd be happy with any kind of extra mode like that. They haven't had anything since they did Chronicles of the Sword. They put a lot of work into Soulcalibur 3 and making modes that took advantage of your custom characters, thoroughly had fun with them. But in Soulcalibur 4 and 5, they didn't really do anything. The only thing they expected you to do with your Soulcalibur created characters was to battle online with them. Soulcalibur 4 had the tower, but the problem with the tower was that since your stats are determined by your equipment, in order to fight the higher level tower pieces, you had to rig up weird equipment just to maximize your stats rather than actually making your character look like you wanted them to. And it just wasn't nearly as fun. All of the really weird and difficult scenarios they had just did not have the same appeal as the interesting things of Soulcalibur 3 as far as I saw. You could take your custom characters through a story in Soulcalibur 4, but the Soulcalibur 4 stories was the worst story mode of any Soulcalibur game. Slightly different for each character, but just a series of very brief narrations, a couple of fights, 5 stages, you're done. And then in the ending, for your custom character, they randomly choose Soulcalibur, Soul Edge, or both, and you leap over a force and grab one or both swords, and then run off jump over the edge of the Citadel and drive off in the sunset. So here's Separate. Boy, it's a pain. If she gets up straight towards me, I can combo her. There we go. But when she chooses to go on the side like that, and I'm so far away. Jeez, yep. There we go. That wasn't too bad.
I'm sorry, but I must move on.
Usually she's actually a lot more cooperative, and it's still an annoying fight. You can see just how bad it is to be pushed back by Separate. Glue, on the other hand, is the opposite, pulls you towards the enemy, and it's not nearly as bad. It's slightly disconcerting at first because you get so close. The enemy who uses Glue tends to be a class with really fast attacks, so they can lash out immediately, and it's harder to get into your combo immediately, but once it's done, it's just as easy to maintain. This is the first Chronicle where you lose if you lose your main character, regardless of the circumstances, so normally I like to play it safe with my main character and not get involved in any in as little combat as possible against dangerous troops or in a situation where I could, not immediately recover. But this is one of the easiest Chronicles in the game. These rebels are low level and low stat, very weak. There are 2 Soulcalibur characters who are, interestingly, it's the only time in the game that the Soulcalibur characters interact with your party members or other people on the map. Mitsurugi here is asked to
The fighter's face. Battle 1.
Mitsurugi is told by the main enemy boss that you can have this one, implying he's some sort of hired mercenary, while Taki over on the left has a conversation with Abilia and decides that Abilia has been possessed by the cursed sword. How exactly that's supposed to be the case, I don't know, but whatever. That's Taki. Everything's about the cursed sword and everyone's possessed by it. Both swords are evil, even Soulcalibur is evil too. Everything takes control of people and are not good. Destroy them all. I didn't like how she really went that direction in Soulcalibur 4 and 5 as well. just going to wait this out until I encounter all 5 and be done. That'll actually probably save even more time. Gonna get a little beat up with that character, but... Okay, that should be all of them. The one difficulty with this is figuring out when exactly the units are actually attacking you, because even if they're entering the square, if they aren't actually involved in combat, as we saw previously on Chronicle 10, they don't enter the fight. So you have to make sure that they're all there. And I didn't quite get all of them, it looks like. We'll see if this loses any time versus my other gold, where I actually loaded up all the, like, 3 different fights. That was cool. I was saying Soulcalibur 5 didn't have any kind of anything good about it. Its story mode was a lot more in-depth and interesting, one of the most in-depth stories of any fighting game. But since you could only pretty much use the characters they gave you, and it didn't give a lot of information on the backstory of some of the other new characters, especially since they had so many new characters, even if they were clones of the old ones, you know, apprentices, daughters, followers, you know, you knew almost nothing about them, and you never got to see any kind of a real storyline telling any kind of their interaction or anything. Even in basic ones like Soulcalibur 2, you see enough in the endings and the character descriptions, get a general idea of how they are, especially after they've been around for like 5 games. But there are no other special modes where you really made use of a custom character. About the only thing you wanted to do with them was fight online with them. Yay. Well. As I say, hopefully Soulcalibur 6 will give us some other new modes for our Create a Soul function. That'll be a lot of fun.
Battle 1, fight!
Be careful from now on.
I just ordered him twice. That's a waste of time. Oh well. There's sometimes a bit of a art to maneuvering people around these lanes, especially in places where there are a lot intersecting. Try to drag them, you know, just with either a control stick or the D-pad. Either way is moderately difficult. Only the final citadel left. There's Taki down in here. She has glue, so she's okay. Mitsurugi is pretty hard because he's a samurai. He can do a huge amount of damage. Samurai have the highest attack in the game, even more than sword masters, so since I'm not level 60 when I fight him, and since I definitely don't fight him with my leader because I don't want to risk dying or I have to restart the scenario. Because again, many more fail conditions than victory conditions. I lose if my main character dies, even if I end up taking the main stronghold at the same time. That your character dying takes priority. So I usually play it safe. Luckily, even the boss here is so pathetic. It's pathetic. I could save probably another 30 seconds or so by waiting for the if the other guy can actually show up. It's kind of hard to say because I have to wait a long time for those other ones to show up though. Because my previous time, I actually fought through one, had to fight another just outside, and then just fought the rest of them inside the tower, so.
You should really give up. It was a decent match.
It's gonna be real close to gold. Now, Tina, one of our new companions, has some sort of realization that the Grandal, that these rebels have Grandal colors and stuff associated with them somehow or something. That's what's implied, but never spoken again. Yeah. Missed gold by a couple of seconds. If I fought them all together at once, it probably would have worked out. Let's see. 5, 3 is where I want the rest of them. That's right. This is definitely a scenario where I've had the biggest time swings on most of my runs. Because of the amount of characters they are and the directions they travel. I have no idea if I'll even get that far. I can't remember. If people go to defend that citadel or I just run through them. I have one person who's not moving. Why are you not moving? Well, I can fortify you in any case. Oh, that's the main character. I didn't quite get that. I probably didn't need to do that, but it's a bit of safety. I don't know if our gold, but I shouldn't lose nearly as much time as I lost yesterday. I lost about 3 minutes.
Battle 1. Fight. Ring out. Fight.
They're similar to what I was talking about with Xiaoxin and Jinkai back in Chronicle 2. There are two characters that will join you starting next Chronicle based on who you defeat first. I've never figured out a way to win without beating at least one of them. This generic soldier has decided to be nasty and is being a lot worse than the high-level character. Sometimes that's Soulcalibur. Chinese swords are really one of the high-level styles that the computer uses.
Battle 3.
Failfan here is the character who's going to be joining us next scenario since we're fighting him first. Rudiger, if we encounter him, would join if I was to fight him first. Against whichever of these two I fight first. I've never seen any other character be the one to join. And I've beaten them in almost every order from the various ways I've done it on casual.
Battle 4. Ring out. Fight.
But Chinese sword and katana are two of the highest AI weapons in the entire game. They almost always, no matter who's using them, have a very good AI. They're very deadly with them. So they tend to destroy me a lot more than almost any other style.
Fight.
Okay, nice little level boost there. Now I should be free to head straight for the main citadel. Might end up being a close race, we'll see. Yoshimitsu and Voldo are two Soulcalibur characters here. They have very interesting secondary outfits. Yoshimitsu has a squid face mask, and Voldo has a sun and moon face mask. Unfortunately, we don't get to see them in 8% because there's only two Soulcalibur characters we fight who are in the way of the shortest path on Chronicle 17. Yeah, even so, I should be able to take this first. It's going to be quite a race, though. I could lose PB here, though, if they end up taking mine first. The biggest problem is that my stronghold's only level 4, so it doesn't have nearly as many hit points as their stronghold, which is level 5. Luckily, he's only doing 3 points of damage. And so are the cavalry, but this knight is going to do, who is Rudiger, he's going to do an extreme amount of damage. It doesn't matter where you are on the map when an action happens. Okay, good. I actually have plenty of time. Excellent, excellent. Final battle. It takes 4 minutes to do the final battle? Yes. Because Gerardo is probably the worst overall boss in the game. He's also the only fight in the game in which your main character is not the first person who comes in. It's usually the last character. Sometimes next to last. So, yep, next to last this time, Cloud. Probably because he's undamaged. But I've never been able to... I guess when I do it this way, it seems to be him, but I've had other instances where it's the last character, so I'm not sure the actual reason why for any of these. Ah, darn. I was doing pretty well there. I expect to lose at least one, sometimes as many as 2 or 3 characters, or maybe even 4 before beating him. He is just so difficult. Luckily, he, like AG, has a weapon that does damage to him every time he attacks, but it doesn't work if he does a throw, so that's unfortunate. So I like him spinning his weapon around like that because he does a lot of damage to himself. I used to rely on attack throws for this fight because it's actually the one thing that affects them. A weapon like Wave Sickle or the Sickle or Wave Swords can... Yep, he's done. Still, that's really good. I'm only going to use 2. That's not bad. But those weapons can do attack throws, which actually will stun them if you can hit them with it to trigger it. They don't always trigger reliably, though, so... And then but they do so little damage that it isn't really that much faster. So I finally decided that, especially since you have to take time to switch weapons and then take time to switch back, it's not worth it to swap over. Instead, just relying on the extreme damage of the katana sword masters and letting him kill himself is better. Using that attack, putting me over his head, often causes him to do whiff moves. That was a pretty good fight. This is a super long cutscene, longest cutscene in the game.
But you do not yet know where.
And now we regret killing our teacher. And we decide he was in the right after
Your
all.
strength is controlled by others. Think for a moment. For whom do you wield your power? For what purpose? And against whom? You must learn to control that strength yourself. Otherwise, you will never become a true warrior.
That's off my sum of best. I'm only 50 seconds behind my sum of best. This is going to be real close to a gold. Yes, 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 it's a gold. Nice, nice, nice. So 3 years ago, we decided to take up the sword and be a protector. 2 years, we didn't even know what we were protecting. 1 year ago, the war ended, but we didn't know what, we hadn't gotten any answers. And yesterday, we lost something precious, aka General Gerardo. And so we've decided to do his part. That is my microphone dying. That is brilliant. So I might not have any speech the rest of the thing. And that distraction caused me to lose a bit of time doing this. So I'm definitely losing time here. Okay. This scenario is my least favorite in the entire game because they restrict you to 3 characters all of a sudden all over again. And you only have, and you have so many citadels to go through. Okay, is there anything you can do to charge? Not really.
Decisive battle.
Yeah, I know I should have charged this thing up a little more. Gonna be doing a lot less commentary now, but hopefully it's coming through. Since I haven't had many viewers all morning, doesn't matter that much, I guess. It'll be kind of sad on YouTube when I post it. But oh well.
You should really give up.
Wonder how it's picking me up from here. I might have to rewatch later and check it out.
Battle
I'll
2.
just continue on
Fight.
pretending that I can be heard.
You should really.
Should have less than an hour of the run left.
Battle 3. Fight.
You should really. I'm sorry, but I must move on.
Struggled on this scenario yesterday. Just lost a couple of battles I shouldn't have lost. So I end up losing a bit more time here. Provided I can do even reasonably well, close to my PB. I'm an excellent pace, of course. But this has, again, with only 3 characters and with a few difficult fights, you can lose a lot of time. by losing the character. Since normally you lose a character when you have 5 and you lose 1/5 of your power taking down the Citadel, but you lose one with only 3 characters, you lose a third. The third thing takes 33% more time instead of 20%, that adds up. Again, these guys at the beginning are very easy, but the Grandal Elite start to show up. There's a bunch of characters over the next 4 scenarios who are dressed in unique outfits. They're unique characters with unique names, but they all have a similar red color scheme. Bright red is the colors of Grandal, and they are very high level and very nasty.
Battle 1. Fight.
Level 16 characters at this point are no match for my main hero.
It looks like I won today, but who knows what'll happen next time?
Three Soulcalibur characters on this map. Saucel Mill is down here in Down Lose, a very unique stronghold mission, where if you get knocked down, you lose. So any kind of knockback hit or anything is a way to instant win. It affects both of you. Both Saucel Mill will just try to do it to you. His AI is programmed to take advantage of that. But if you hit him with a knockdown first, he loses. Blasts high into the air, loses all health. It's pretty amusing to watch. Of course, since it's 8%, I'm skipping him. Here in Whirlwind, we have Talim and Yunsung, and they're one of the more annoying fights in the game because you have to fight and beat both of them in a Citadel, and they have a nasty Whirlwind, and are programmed to take advantage of the Whirlwind to knock you out of the ring. Because with Whirlwind active, you get thrown around a lot when you get hit with knockbacks. Especially having only 3 characters, that's what makes this really bad.
Fight.
Luckily it's any percent, so I can just skip them. Probably go back to see if there's anything more I can do with Soulcalibur percent after I've got my 310 on any percent, which should be today, provided I don't have any catastrophic failures in the last 5 Chronicles.
Fight.
Once again, these high-level Grandal Elite sometimes just go crazy. Another instance where I really wish that the ring out had finished the enemy off entirely. Because getting the ring out was actually bad for me because it disrupted my rhythm.
Don't hold back next time.
Didn't allow me to combo. So getting a gold on this one's going to be totally impossible, but at least I still have a pretty high window for error on this one on my PB. So raising that stronghold up to 3, Rydia should recover there so that I lose the least amount of time possible.
Battle 1. Fight.
That battle is another good example of why I use only one dancer though, because even at level 40 I got destroyed that quickly when they decided to start attacking. A Swordmaster who is level 40 would have taken all those hits in stride and still had some left over, especially after using Life Drain. But this is an example of why I use the Dancer at all, because the level 40 Dancer does a lot more damage than this. There we go.
Ring out.
This really wasn't a fair
As well as having that
contest.
combo in the first place, the actual stun lock. Which is funny, it wouldn't be a stun lock on a character, a good Soulcalibur human player has had to fight against it. You can stay down longer, melee block to get up. You can figure out several ways of getting around it. But Peter never seems to learn. AI in this game is not that great. At least not at certain things. Another nasty stronghold where I have separate. This was actually the fight I lost yesterday, so I could lose even more time if I don't play this one properly. The Dancer was extremely rude.
Decisive battle. The fight. Battle 1. Fight.
Ah, thank goodness, that's how she usually is.
Battle 2. Fight.
Ah, yay.
It was a decent match.
Okay, so I should still save a bit of time off my PB here at least. Luckily, the final boss of this scenario is one of the least of its problems. He has all guard break, which actually is the sorts of the only glitch I've really found in the game that's semi-consistent. When you have the all guard break attribute, you're actually vulnerable to taking a huge amount of damage. So one of the weapon properties is auto guard break, where occasionally, when an enemy's blocking your attack, they'll be hit by a guard break stun just out of nowhere. And if that happens and you're using a weapon like that lance charge that Gerardo was using at me, where you just ram forward, it does several hits in a row. And if one of the early ones causes that guard break hit, then the follow-up hit, the first follow-up hit will actually do a huge amount of damage. I don't know why, but it's just something in the programming, the relation between the guard break attributes. So, unfortunately, it's too hard to get off consistently to either show off or try to abuse, but it is an interesting little quirk of the game.
Decisive battle. The battle 1. Fight.
You should really give up.
I love how these nations
Sorry, but
have
I
no
must move on.
nationality. They have all the nationalities all linked together in them. There's so many Japanese-style samurai and ninja interspersed with all these Western warriors, and all the soldiers are generically in Western armor, even if they use Eastern weapons. Now Tina comes to the realization that those rebels who fought in Chronicle 14 weren't actually real rebels. They were a force sent by Emperor Strife in order to try and kill us specifically. Knew that we would turn on him immediately. Now in this scenario, we get reintroduced to our old characters we used to have. And we have to defeat them in order to, they've been given shards of Soul Edge. Which has brainwashed them, and so we have to defeat them to get them back. So interestingly, I found out when playing this on main category only strategy, where main character only category, where I only make one custom character and otherwise have to use the characters given, that I thought you all got them all back after the scenario, but you only do it if you actually defeat them. That never come up in a speedrun, of course, because I never waste time to check those things, but going by this route, I'll only get one of them back. But of course it doesn't matter in any percent at all. It was sad to find out, because there's a couple characters I'd like to have back, but it's not worth the time to track them down and fight them. This route down here, which actually goes through Soulcalibur characters, is the quickest route by far. I'm going to be fighting Sophia first here in Coin Collector, a pretty much useless thing that, as you can see, I'm going to have a lot of coins coming out, but they don't really do anything for me. And Tira is here in Glue. Once again, Glue, initially kind of annoying, but once you get your setup going, it doesn't matter at all. Tana's actually best of that, because you can go right into shoulder charge and it tends to hit first. But the while and spin takes too long to set up to be reliable on Glue. Actually, I have another idea I need to remember to try. Just like I'm expanding my...
Battle 1. Fight. Get ready.
Yesterday I got a record 600 coins. I'm not going to get that many this time. So that was Mega. He's the most... He uses the katana, so he's my favorite of the actual guys you keep.
Fight.
And here's Sophia, who is normally not this hard. There we go.
I'm sorry, but I must move on.
This scenario is so short with so few battles that most of the time is loss or gain is based on just how well I fight them, since there's nothing else I can do. Odd that it can cost me up to a minute just from semi-bad fights, that even though I never lose a character on this scenario.
Yeah, so this one, yesterday went super awesome. Today, not quite so much, but at least I haven't blown 3 scenarios, so I'm still on really, really good pace.
Decisive battle.
So Fitia's alternate costume that you fight her in this game is actually better, I think, than her...
Battle 1. Fight.
Wow. Okay, well, that's a huge time loss. That strategy did not work out nearly as well as I thought it would.
Battle 2. Fight.
It's over.
Where are you going? Stay down. Ring out. Fight.
It's over.
Taunting me after falling out of the ring, that was an excellent strategy, Tira.
You never stood a chance.
And I just said I'd never lost a character or two. Something like that is always bound to go wrong on one of my runs. I think this citadel's big enough that it's worth the time to build this up so my main character will show up. Anyway, my other characters are spread in these 5, so if I defeated them I'd get them back, including Larage and Cannon, who Larage I didn't even save, but for some reason he's back. Alien joined up with me automatically. Jinkai or Xiaoxin would have returned. Now, instead of being rebels, even though we're rebels, we have a new name as Arceus, for whatever reason. Xiaoxin, if he is a character you recruited, when he returns here, he talks a little bit about it, but doesn't give a detail as to why we're suddenly called Arceus, as the rebels against the Grand All Empire. Whatever, we don't know. But the evil commander here is the second. Aeolus is the second character who is extra tall for some strange reason. So that's kind of interesting. And he is a fan, he's all unblockable, but we don't care about him. Although likely now he'll kill me because that's the way things have been going. Now the question is if I'm actually going to lose time off my PP, because again, I'm not going to gold at all, but might lose time off my PP as well. Might fall under it. It's going to be close, I'm in it.
Decisive battle. Now, battle 1. Fight.
You should really give up. It looks like I won today, but who knows what'll happen next time.
Yay, didn't go red at least. So yeah, now all of our guys have decided to join us, and now one new person stands in our way, Adelia, who of course will defeat all traitors, even if it's us. This scenario is also dangerous because I can't lose my main character. One of my, I had a major run of 100% that was going super duper well, but then I foolishly was careless with my main character and she died, and I had to restart the whole scenario after I was 10 minutes into it. Soulcalibur character here is Siegfried, down in this fort. Reserve offense up is one we encounter occasionally. It causes you to gain more attack power when your health falls low, so they're rather dangerous. I have to fight most of the enemies on this map. So I have varying strategies on how to try and deal with that. This route up here is by far the shortest.
Now, battle 1, fight!
Two of the soldiers here are Rebellia soldiers from
That
Chronicle
was a
1,
pretty good warm-up
much
fight.
higher level, Ishtar and Notice. Then, except for one strange third level character, I'll go into because we'll probably be fighting him in a bit, all the rest of them are the Grandal Elite. And they are actually higher level even than Ishtar and Notice, which is one of the odd but interesting things about this scenario. That seems to be implied story, but not actual story. Once again, holding off on fighting in order to gather in as many as possible into a single load, while letting most of my troops beat on that tower and bring it down. Then I have to do a couple of tricky things.
Battle
Here's
1,
Baldwin, level
fight.
3. I believe he's data lost somewhere in the system. He was probably intended to be a soldier of Abilia in Chronicle 1, but was removed. But at some point, just for whatever reason, the data for this scenario was that unused data loaded
Battle 2,
from Chronicle 1, where you're low level instead of level 30-ish or 40-ish character you should have been.
ring out. Fight!
It's over.
Battle 3, fight!
It's over. It's over. It's over. It's over. It's over. It's over. It's over.
Chinese swords, I hate them. I actually like using the sword. It's a fun weapon to use, but for some reason I just don't have any
Battle,
good
fight.
strategies with it. Here's Notice, the other one. You see mid-30s instead of 40s.
It's over. It's over. It's over.
Also a generic kick-edge weapon instead of anything special.
Okay.
Which is also kind of interesting. You think that if they leveled up, they would have been given new weapons as well. Because all the other named characters have a one of the special weapons with bonus properties after a certain point in the Chronicle. At least Chronicle 1 they don't. Maybe Chronicle 2? Can't remember. Never pay attention. Oh god, I don't have to fight her, thank goodness. She's a mean katana wielder.
Decisive battle.
So this scenario is one of the few with a very unique victory condition. I don't have to take the main citadel, I just have to defeat Abilia. which is a whole lot easier actually. Thank goodness, even though she's in the main citadel, you think it would be the same thing. It actually isn't, as we will see.
You should really give up.
I have to be very careful in this fight though, not very dangerous, especially since these are generic soldiers, but if I foolishly let myself get wrung out or something, and I lose the scenario and have to start it all over, not fun. Especially since I'm 6 minutes in. That would pretty much kill my entire lead I have and put even my PB in danger, even though it seems assured I'll get one at this point with only 3 Chronicles to go. Don't know if that delay is worth it or not, but I think that giving me a few extra seconds to hit that citadel does make it kind of worth it. So now everyone's rushing back to defend. There's a couple things I want to do here. I want to minimize the number of people who actually fight in the citadel, and most especially I don't want Rydia to, because she's almost certainly to die. And again, that means I'll have to restart the whole scenario over again. I also want to prevent those guys from coming in behind me starting combat with me, because if they hit my group here, my entire group will turn to fight them, so I won't be taking the citadel anymore. Abelia is the 3rd character with Guardian Force. Luckily, she's easier than the other 2 by far, because she doesn't have Quake accompanying her like Agi does, and unlike Gerardo, her stats are trash. So I can usually kill her with 1 person. 2 should be the minimum necessary, or the maximum necessary. But she has a couple of goons, I don't want to bother fighting them, because they will also have Guardian Force, and it's troublesome, so I just, well, you'll see.
I will not lose against a traitor, even if it is you.
Battle 1. Fight. It's over.
One disadvantage is that her weapon doesn't cause her to lose health, but again, her stats are so trash that it doesn't matter. Oh, I actually lost. Too bad.
Damn.
That's why I have 1 backup. Possibly could have won that by being a little bit smarter, but...
Battle 2. Fight.
Okay, now I have to deal with 2 more guys who have Guardian Force. It's such a pain. It isn't worth it.
Battle 3.
I've given up on this life.
Bring up. Fight. Bring up.
What? Impossible!
Oh man, Silas's perfect record is broken. Yeah, how about them apples? Okay, Chronicle 19, biggest Chronicle in the game. Doesn't feel as big as 16 because I actually get all 5 people. But Luna suddenly appears, and it's like, yeah, this guy, annoying old man named Gerardo, was taking care of me after I lost to you. And he told me if anything happened to him, I had to help you out. Man, that's such a pain. But here's the sword, Soulcalibur. You can have it now. Okay. For the longest time, I went the southern route for some reason. I think I thought that I would avoid most fighting, but it's so long and roundabout, it's not actually a very good strategy. And I saved a lot of time yesterday by going this route, nearly enough to recover my PB. Even after the mistakes I made on 3 Chronicles. And I still made a few mistakes on the end of this without thinking the strategy out properly. If I do it right here, I should save a couple of, maybe 2.5 minutes. Because I saved a minute at least already. Final Soulcalibur character, Nightmare, appropriate for the final one, is over here. Of course, we're going to be ignoring him like we have most of the rest. By this time, he's, especially since he's a barbarian, which is actually one of the weaker classes in the game, he's pretty easy to beat. There's an optional super boss here, though. End is inside of this thing. Aerial Wind, that's what the name of it is. When you get knocked into the air, you go flying, floating up in the air for several seconds before coming down. He's a level 99 Swordmaster with the katana, so he's pretty difficult. But not too bad using my super cheese strats. Of course, you only see him when I play 100%. I focus on him first, because he can sometimes kill 1 or 2 of my guys if he gets really nasty. He has a purple health bar, over 800 hit points, one of only 3 characters in the game to have that many. And super high stats, everything else, so he does a lot of damage. So even with, if I don't have him and it really gets stun lock, he'll destroy me. Very good katana usage too, does a lot of knockdown hits followed up into strong throws immediately when you stand up that are hard to avoid. Overall pain.
Battle 1. Fight!
You should really give up.
Battle 2. Fight!
It looks like I won today, but who knows what'll happen next time.
Okay, coming up is going to be special trick number 1. Because enemies aren't allowed to, as I've employed before, including back in the last scenario. Once again, there's a couple times on this one I'm going to be using a unit to assault a stronghold to prevent an enemy from leaving it. Nope, I screwed that up. Well, this is going to cost me a little bit of time, unfortunately. I needed to delay the movements of the rest of my guys a little more, so that she wouldn't come out of the Citadel at all. This will at least prevent her from stopping my other forces, but Bovards is going to be sacrificed to the greater good.
Decisive battle. Battle 1. Fight!
Excuse me. You should really give up. It looks like I got lucky.
100 wins.
Final battle. Fight!
You're That was a pretty good warm-up fight.
These guys seem to be worth a large amount of experience, even though they're very low level. Useful then that I have Sealess taking them out, one of my sword masters, because now my dancer needs very little more experience. I want most of it to go to my sword masters.
Battle 1. Fight! Ring out! Final battle. Fight! Ring out! Fight!
Did you really expect to get the better of my blade?
Now only the final citadel in the game, which interestingly enough does not have any kind of powerful mission you'd expect from the final citadel. All guard break, that's it. That's what Chester gets, because yes, as we saw at some points in the dialogue earlier, Chester is now serving Emperor Strife, so he's guarding the main final citadel before we go in to fight the Emperor himself. Yeah, one more time we have to deal with that annoying guy. Unfortunately, it isn't very hard. It's kind of anticlimactic after all the things we've been through. No no impregnable or anything. Not that I'm complaining, mind you. I am glad not to have to face another impregnable at this point. Or any kind of mission on good old Strife. Kind of amazed they were able to take that. Am I gonna have to back off? I think I am. The things I do to minimize fights. I'm playing that other thing a little bit earlier and having Bart's attack that citadel rather than dying to it will also save a little bit of time. Probably another 30 seconds or so.
Battle 1. Fight!
You should really give up.
Battle 2. Fight!
Chester is a sword master all of a sudden.
Fight!
Oh wow. I expected him to kill himself with his dagger first, but apparently he's got some sort of vampiric going on. I'm not sure if Kingslayer actually has vampiric. It does damage to him when he attacks.
Battle 3. Fight!
Oh well. At least that gives me some experience for one of my other swordsmen. That's really good. Because I need all the experience I can get on them in the final scenario. It's the biggest, kinda, you know, it's scary thing about, any percent. Farewell, Chester. Strife. Okay, now, no strongholds here. Just a lot of units on the ground that I have to fight my way through. Takes a lot of time to load all these individual battles, so I've decided not to do it. Instead, I just bull rush my way through, finally taking advantage of the rule that allows you, basically the game mechanic that allows you to fight it out on the field. Since each one is individual, I can gang up on them 5 and 1 and fight my way through. Arguably more boring than fighting them in Soulcalibur combat, but since I mostly just use spin to win and such anyway, probably not that much more. And much, much, much faster to their health fleet than to load up those long loading screens. Whoever fells the final blow in this method of combat gets the experience for defeating the person. So I really want it to go to everyone but my main leader, since I don't want to use them in combat for 2 reasons. Number 1, the same thing, it's the danger of if I lose my main character in this scenario, I have to restart it, I lose the scenario. And 2, there's a long cutscene when your main hero breaches Strife, and we want to avoid that cutscene because that waits about another 30 seconds to a minute. generally prefer as well for most of my damage to be centered on 1 or 2 people, especially my my primary character, so then I have a couple of fully healthy people to go after Strife himself. And this scenario is another good reason to not have a horde of dancers, because health is the only thing that really matters for these combats for your stats, because your health depletes. It doesn't matter what level you are, what your attack power is. It's determined entirely by hidden statistics that each unit has. Consistent for all your characters, not consistent for the, well, consistent per character on the computer, but each one does not have the exact amount that one of your characters would have. Some of them are very unique, but they each do, you know, different amounts of damage and take different amounts of damage from their characters. Most of them follow the same pattern, all your generic ones, but a lot of characters like here have specialized stats. You can see. Dangerous. Gonna lose a little bit of time, but need to ensure the safety of my commander. Sometimes this happens.
Save. Battle 1. Fight.
It'll be a long time before my sword is complete.
Okay, one left to go through and then Strife. So again, I might lose a little bit of time on this, but since I'm 8 minutes ahead, provided I don't lose the scenario, I've got my PB, so not super worried.
Final battle. Fight.
It's over. 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 This is over. It's over.
Ring out.
Ta-da!
You never stood a chance.
And that's it. Woo! Almost 9 minutes. Nice, nice. "2 minutes and 40 seconds more than my sum of best." So I did extremely well the entire run. Several of those strategies are working out. Can still shave a few more minutes, but that's probably going to be it for any percent grinding for a little bit as well. Want to get back on Soulcalibur percent that I haven't done in over a year. See if I can do anything new to that route. Gonna have to go back to 100% a couple times probably for this upcoming marathon, the complete-a-thon. And otherwise, try out a few more of the meme categories, but then it's time about to move on to other speed
Emperor
games.
died. Both the evil blade and the holy blade disappeared into darkness.
I want to pick up the new Secret of
The
Mana.
empire
I
collapsed,
really need to get back to
and the
routing
people were left
Pool of
only
Radiance.
with devastated
Try things
lands
like
and the
Xenosaga.
memories of the terrible war.
Xenosaga 2, rather, is the one I want to speedrun. Maybe Kingdom Hearts
The
2.
people, however, eventually forgot the hardships.
So much fun to
They
play.
rebuilt the
Speedrunning is
raised
one thing I want to do, but
villages
you
and
have to do
sowed
so many
new
of the hardest
seeds
things in
upon the
speedrunning that
destroyed
game.
fields.
I can speedrun this because it's super duper simple, but lots of fun. I really hope Soulcalibur 6 has a similar mode. If so, I'm gonna obviously work on routing a speedrun for that as well. I just hope that I can find some sort of a similarly abusive
Then by the
ability to
fireside,
use.
they told the tales. The
And
tales
there's
of the
the
great ones who
animatronic
spilt
statue.
their blood upon those
Yeah.
lands.
So that's it. Chronicles of the Sword, any percent for Soulcalibur 3. Thanks for watching. And we will see you all again the next time I'm together for this. Oh, I'm saving over this? Oh, that's fine.
The legend will never
final
die.
word.
Welcome to the new stage of history.